To find is encontrar, encontrar. And if we want to say I find, we know it's going to end in an O, and it should be encontro. But something strange happens. Instead of being encontro, that first O, which is the part of the word that we emphasize, encontro, it splits into UE and becomes encuentro, encuentro. And that continues with you find, encuentras. So let's see if you can continue the pattern. How would we say he, she, or it finds? Encuentra, encuentra. And what about they find? Encuentran, encuentran. And another verb like this is volver, volver. To return or to come back, volver should be volvo. But this funny change happens and it becomes vuelvo, vuelvo, vuelvo. I return, I come back, vuelvo. How would you say, do you return? Do you come back? Vuelves, vuelves. What about he or she comes back? Vuelve. And they come back? Vuelven. So we could say they always come back. Siempre vuelven. Siempre vuelven. So, encuentro, I find, vuelvo, I return. The O collapsing into UE, or splitting into UE. Encuentro, vuelvo. And you'll notice that in the practice questions, I didn't ask for we. I had to say we return or we find. And that's because the change doesn't apply here. And we already know our easy rule for we. And this virtually always happens with only a rare couple of exceptions. In the present tense, you can nearly always take the R off and add mos. So you just don't have to think about the changes or irregularities. So how would we say we find? Encontramos. Encontramos. And how about we return? Volvemos. Volvemos. We always return. Siempre volvemos. Siempre volvemos. Okay, let's add two more to this group. The verbs to sleep and to dream are also stem changes in this way. The O changes to UE. So, to sleep is dormir, dormir, think of dormitory. And to dream is soñar, soñar. So dormir, to sleep, soñar, to dream. Dormir, soñar. And if we apply the change, I sleep is duermo, duermo, duermo. And I dream, sueño, sueño. And you can do the rest. How would we say you sleep? Or do you sleep? Duermes. Duermes. The word for well is bien. So if you want to ask, do you sleep well? ¿Duermes bien? ¿Duermes bien? He or she sleeps would be duerme. Duerme. He always sleeps here. Siempre duerme aquí. Siempre duerme aquí. They sleep. Duermen. We sleep. We know our rule doesn't apply here. We've got our own rule for we. Take off the R and add mos. Dormimos. Dormimos. How about you dream? So to dream is soñar. You dream is sueñas. Sueñas. He or she dreams sueña. Sueña. They dream sueñan. They dream a lot. Sueñan mucho. Sueñan mucho. And of course, we dream, nice and easy, soñamos. Soñamos. So far, we have learnt there are a group of verbs called stem-changing verbs. And they're called stem-changing because the stem in the middle is the part that changes. The endings are the same. And we've learnt 4 of these so far. Volver, dormir, soñar. And the O to UE is not the only kind of stem change. See if you can work out how this stem changes. To think is pensar, pensar. So pensar, to think. But I think is not penso, but pienso, pienso. The E has split into IE. It's collapsed into IE. I say collapse because it's to do with the stress that's being put on that syllable that makes it change. So, penso becomes pienso, pienso. And this is another group. The E change into IE. So how would we say you think or do you think? Piensas, piensas, piensas. And incidentally, the word for what is que. So if you want to say, what do you think? ¿Qué piensas? ¿Qué piensas? And he, she, it thinks would be piensa, piensa. They think piensan, piensan. And of course, pensamos, the easy one with no change. Take off the R, add mos, pensamos. And there are a number of very common, very useful verbs that work like this. So let's take 2. To want and to prefer. To want and to prefer. To want is querer, querer. And to prefer is preferir, preferir. So querer and preferir, to want and to prefer. So I want is quiero, quiero, not quiero as some would have it. QU is pronounced like a K always in Spanish. So quiero, I want, and I prefer. Prefiero, prefiero, prefiero. So quiero and prefiero. Quiero, prefiero. Quiero, prefiero. How would you say, do you want? ¿Quieres? Do you want something? ¿Quieres algo? ¿Quieres algo? What about he or she wants? Quiere. Quiere. And of course that is the same for you formal. So you formal, do you want something, would be ¿Quiere algo? ¿Quiere algo? What about do you prefer? ¿Prefieres? ¿Prefieres? They prefer? Prefieren. 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 They want? Quieren. 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 And the easy, we want, queremos, we prefer, preferimos. As I've mentioned before, it's important not to feel overwhelmed by the information you are trying to take in. It's not necessary to remember it all now. There will be opportunities to commit it all to memory, but that's not necessary now. For the moment, just listen to the explanations, pause the video when you think you need to give yourself time to think and to answer the practice questions. And that's all you need to do at the moment. The rest will come later. If you think you really haven't got or understood a part of it, then just rewind and listen again. Okay, so a quick recap. We've learnt some verbs have a change in their stem, in their middle part. The first group we learnt were where the O collapsed under the stress and went from O to UE. And so we had encuentro, we had vuelvo, we had duermo, and we had sueño. And then we learnt that there is another group where the E collapses into, or splits into IE. So pensar changed to pienso, and we had quiero, and we had prefiero, prefiero. Now you may remember from a previous lesson to have and to come. To have is tener, and to come is venir, tener, venir. And these are also affected by the E to IE stem change. So you have or do you have is tienes, tienes. You come, do you come is vienes. Do you come here often or do you come here much is vienes aquí mucho, vienes aquí mucho. He has, tiene, or she has, tiene. They have, tienen, tienen. They come, vienen. And you may notice that I haven't mentioned I have and I come. Why do you think that is? Well, you'll remember that I have and I come already have their own little change. They were go verbs. I have is tengo and I come is vengo. So the stem change doesn't apply to them. So if we took the whole verb for tener, to have, it would start with I have, tengo. Then the stem change starts and we have tienes. Then we have he or she, you formal, it, tiene, then tienen, and our we, the easy one, tenemos. And the same with venir would be vengo, I come, vienes, do you come, viene, vienen, venimos. So how would we say do they come here much? Do they come here much? Vienen aquí mucho. Vienen aquí mucho. What about do you have something? Do you have something? ¿Tienes algo? ¿Tienes algo? What about they have a problem? They have a problem. A problem is un problema. Un problema. They have a problem. Tienen un problema. Tienen un problema. What about I have a problem? Tengo un problema. Tengo un problema. What about do you, formal, have a problem? Do you, formal, have a problem? ¿Tiene un problema? ¿Tiene un problema? How about we always come here? Siempre venimos aquí. Siempre venimos aquí.